ladies and gentlemen, once again, welcome to the finals. I think we'll start off by putting our hands together. A big round of applause for all the performers tonight. Also, we'd like to say thank you very much to all the supporters in the audience, the parents, our friends from the media who have taken time to be with us here today, and our sponsors, Singer Sri Lanka PLC. Thank you very much for supporting us, Singer, throughout the past few years and still continuing to support us in this wonderful venture. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have the judges with us. But before I go into the judges, I have to remind you, something new that we've added is the fact that today's event has been video recorded. And if you need to get a copy, you can speak to Mr. Adams over there. He's the representative from the YMCA. It should be available in about a month, and you can talk to him. You can get your copy if you like. First, let me introduce our wonderful judges tonight. Let's start by giving each of them a round of applause. We have Mr. Shanaka Amarasinghe, Mr. Chris White, and the lovely Mrs. Madhubhashini Disanaikaratnaka. Three judges that actually don't need introductions. Nevertheless, I'd like to take a moment to introduce each of them. We'll start with first judge, Shanaka Amarasinghe, a lawyer, an actor, and a media personality, although not in that order every time. He's currently the counsel for Sri Lanka's largest law firm, Julius & Creasy. He's a founder member of the Broken Leg Theatre Company in Colombo, which produced Yasmina Reza's Art and God of Carnage. Also, he's a gentleman who played a small yet popular role on the Oscar-nominated Midnight's Children. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a star with us in the audience. Furthermore, he, of course, is the host of the famous sports show on Yes FM, which is The Score. It's been going on for 13 years. And today, he's joining us as one of the judges. So once again, welcome to Mr. Shanaka Amarasinghe. And joining us is also director Chris White, associate for the Royal Shakespeare Company and a freelance director specializing in international collaborations and new writing. After working as an assistant director at the Young Vic in Shakespeare's Globe, he first worked for RSC as a research assistant on a production of The Malcontent before becoming assistant director on the Spanish Golden Age season, touring 4 productions to London and Madrid. And today, of course, he's here with us as one of the judges. So welcome to Mr. Chris White as well. And next we have Mrs. Madhubhashini Disanaikaratnaka, won the Gratian Prize in 2011 for her novel There Is Something I Have to Tell You, and having been shortlisted for it twice for her short story collections Tales of Shades and Shadows and Strange Tales of Love. She's also written books for learners of English as a second language, and she's a former head of the senior lecturer in the English language teaching unit of the University of Sri Jagadhanapura. So let's give her a round of applause. So I have the results with me. I know you want to get down to that. But in order to improve, make ourselves better, I think we should give it over to the judges because they have a lot of comments that they would like to share with you. And today I would like to invite the judge that would be speaking on behalf of our panel, Director Chris White.
Thank you very much. I'm a little bit tall, so I'll lift this up. Could I ask, please, the lighting department just to lower the lights on us so that we can see you? Is that possible, please? Thank you. A little bit more? That's perfect, thank you. So, I'd like to say, first of all, on behalf of the 3 of us, and I'm pretty sure that I speak for all of you in the audience who haven't performed as well, that the biggest pleasure of this evening has been seeing the contrast, the combination of plays, the variety of language, and the absolute dedication and purpose that has driven all of those pieces. And I would have enjoyed seeing any of those pieces on their own. Each of them have particular merits and highlights and striking choices, but taken together, it's a wonderful distillation and representation of this whole festival, which is something I'm learning about its history and how it is a living force here today. So all four of you groups, as one big ensemble, have done this competition and done this theatre proud tonight. So that's the most important thing I'd like to say. We've been backstage discussing, and we were responding between the pieces with each other as judges as well. But you know yourself, one of the main things you respond to when you're watching any piece of drama, but particularly Shakespeare, is that it doesn't just contact your head or your memory, but something in your body can start to change. You can feel a little scared or fearful or driven or taken up with something. And I'm just going to speak through some of the elements of each piece which really struck us. The defining quality of the first piece, Romeo and Juliet, that we all saw this evening, for us was the absolute seriousness of intent, the will, and a group of young people who were clearly working together and supporting each other right from the beginning of that piece right to the end. It's difficult for them because they have to go first, and I think they kicked us off really, really well with that. So that seriousness, the dedication, and also the storytelling. It's a play that sometimes can be deceptive because you think, everyone knows Romeo and Juliet. Two people fall in love from the wrong side of the tracks and they end up, dying. But it's deceptive. It's actually very difficult, and it's very difficult if you're taking an extract, as they did. But I think it was objectively very, very clear. There was also elements of real courage and boldness. We thought in the performance of the nurse, for example, even though not every moment came off, there was courage and real decision-making and real impulse in that. Some of the things that we think you should maybe think about are momentum. I think there was parts of the piece when the momentum dropped. Maybe that wasn't helped so much by the blackouts and the pauses between the scenes. And also the external pressure on the situation. You've got these two people in love, but there was a little sense that they were in a comfortable and easy place. But if you think about it, if either of them get caught by the families or the authorities, everything is finished. So maybe a little element of pressure, danger was missing at points, or something you could think about or develop, and also desire as well. A very difficult thing to capture in a story, particularly in the context with which you're working. But I think if you could add danger and desire to your commitment, to your clarity, the piece will be even stronger. But thank you very much, Group 1. Excellent. So the second piece was Twelfth Night, that we all saw. Great change of tone. We went from from tragedy to comedy, back to tragedy and back to comedy. So I think that's what really excited us about the range this evening. Very bright beginning to this piece. And the words sounded pleasurable in your mouths. Shakespeare, there's so much mystery around Shakespeare. There's so much disagreement and exciting differences of opinion between individuals, between different cultures, between different eras about what is Shakespeare, how to stage it, and how you should do it. But fundamentally, it's the language. The only unarguable element is the language of what remains of these plays. And in this piece, we really felt that there was relish and pleasure of that language in the mouths of those performers, which is a great credit to you. There were strong interpretive choices in this piece as well. We think that Cesario, in a way, felt like the heart of the piece. And I thought you brought out, as a company, but particularly the actor playing Cesario, of someone who wasn't going to be a meek page working for a duke, or someone who's, you know, missing their brother or scared in a foreign place, which is often how you see that part performed. But you found a brashness, a bravery, a joyfulness, and almost an abandon in that part that I found a very interesting interpretive choice and discovery within that. The love triangle was clear. It's a very difficult story to tell, even if it's a story we've come across and we see in plenty of places. But we thought you really captured that. Some of the idiosyncrasies of Malvolio were very striking, very funny. And in particular, the sense of dilemma was very acute in this piece. In all of Shakespeare's plays, you have people placed under extreme pressure, trying to make very difficult decisions at the most important moment of their lives. And I think you really nailed that. You really kind of gave that sense to an audience of the struggle within those people, particularly Cesario. Some of the things that we think you can think about as you reflect on the piece and this experience is that maybe it was a little too long. I don't mean that in terms of the actual duration of the piece within the confines of the festival, but just in terms of the dramatic crescendo of the piece. We each independently felt that it maybe finished one or two scenes too late. The framing and the structure, however, of the tableau at the beginning and the end was a very smart, strong directorial choice. I thought worked brilliantly. And the other element, I think, as well, is about rhythm. I think sometimes the rhythm became too sustained with this piece. The variety of the language and also the pain that is present in this comedy is something that at points maybe you didn't quite capture. For instance, the very beginning with Duke Orsino, instead of it being a play just about love, it's about the suffering of love. And I think that first note wasn't quite captured with the accuracy of text. Also, the variety, the sort of rhythmic variety within scenes is something that you could look to develop, the pace throughout as well. And also the inclusion and the consideration of the other cast members who were working as the set. There were some strong images that we felt as judges, but I would like, which is something we talked about, I in particular would have liked to have seen a greater involvement of those members of the cast who were on stage but not visible. So, thank you enormously to Group 2 for a very strong top line. And then we went back to tragedy. And as with the previous piece, one of the strengths of this was the structuring and the framing of it on this stage. I thought the use of height, the use of scale, the use of depth was very satisfying. And the moment that the two friends came to sit on the edge of the stage, I think it really contacted us as an audience very effectively. And I thought it made it easier for us to listen. I think we'd been given an offering with that small moment of come, listen carefully, listen in, and it really opened up the piece for us. We had a difference of opinion really between us about some of the interpretive choices with Romeo and love and friendship. We had a very lively discussion about that. One of the things that we all agreed on, though, was that rhythmically there was a strong shift within this piece, and something of the antithesis within the play, of the sort of huge oppositions within the language, within people's experiences, was really brought out in the kind of choppy and broken nature of how those friends were experiencing love. This was a piece that felt very anchored by a clear approach, and it felt like everyone was absolutely aware that they were telling a story about friendship. A story about how friendship is formed, how friendship is experienced, and then how friendship is destroyed through enmity and violence and death. And that clarity gave a very interesting insight to a play which, of course, is famously couched in terms of love. And we asked between ourselves, well, does it matter that love wasn't as present as friendship, and that there is no single or simple answer to that? What matters is that there was a strong decision, there was a commitment to that decision, not just by the director, but by everybody in that play. There was a real collective voice within that piece of work. There were strong performances throughout. I have to say, I think Mercutio's performance was really astonishing, absolutely fantastic. I don't say that to sort of separate or grade people, because that's not something we're at all interested in doing in terms of performances, but just in terms of honesty, that the pleasure, and I can tell it was true for many of us in the audience, just the pleasure of being in the company of someone who has the ability, but also the openness, the willingness, the desire to occupy the present tense entirely, not to pretend, not to try and become something that she isn't, but just to let, as Shanika was saying, to sort of let these words travel through her to us. At its core, that really simple pleasure was achieved, many moments throughout that piece, but consistently in Mercutio's performance, we feel. And again, there's an interpretive choice to that. Sometimes Mercutio is played as a foil, or as someone who's, a little, just a bit cheeky, but not much else. But, Mercutio was quick-witted, warm, playful, rebellious, provocative. So many qualities were brought out. Maybe that's what she's like, right? Yes, that laugh means yes. No, it was very, very comfortable performance. We felt it was a real pleasure seeing the live music. We thought that worked well. Some things that you might think about are that even though there was a clarity of making the play about friendship and the journey of a friendship, which was clearly told, some of the jumps in the storytelling were less secure than others. We appreciate you're turning a 2-hour play into a sort of 28-minute piece, which is very difficult. But even considering that, some of the moments between scenes felt a little abrupt. When Romeo goes to the friar, that jump to us felt a little strange, having not seen Romeo with Juliet. It felt like, for those people that don't know the play, it felt like dramaturgically like quite a big jump to make. Similarly, we thought that the party, although it was a very effective piece of storytelling, strongly presented, was maybe over-presented. And some of the internal questioning and internal life of the characters and the relationship between characters was diminished in that scene in favour of presentation, where elsewhere it flourished. But that said, very memorable, very, very strong piece, thank you. I mentioned at the beginning of this reflection that the contrast was the greatest pleasure for me as a first-time visitor, guest of your competition, this process. And personally, and we sort of shared this between us, that was at its sharpest, of moving from the end of the death of Tybalt and Mercutio and into being in the forest, and hearing this kind of tripping, light, playful, joyful, skipping language, even if you didn't understand a word of English, just as in terms of sound and how sound can inform and infect us, we felt that was a really wonderful contrast that you as a whole group achieved this evening. The language felt very comfortable in your mouths. It felt like you owned it. It didn't feel like you were speaking the words of some dead guy from 400 years ago, who arguably has nothing to do with your lives and your experience of life. But that wasn't the case whatsoever with your piece. It felt like it was yours. There was a spirit and a wit throughout. It's a very difficult play. We felt that was a brave choice as a group to take on. And you found delight in the play, and you avoided the most difficult element, which I see in the UK all the time, which is essentially actors laughing at their characters, or actors encouraging an audience to pick fun at characters, as opposed to experiencing the agony and the excruciating moments of not being loved, or falling in love, or being overheard, or misunderstood. You didn't patronise these people or their situations, you just went with them and offered up the delight to us. It's a very difficult balance, and I thought you got that balance right. Very cleanly staged, very simple, not fussy, not showing off. Direct, connected well with the audience. And you dealt with the epilogue very, very smartly. Lots of productions cut that epilogue in the UK. I thought it was great that you kept it in. And we all independently commented on Rosalind as one of the great Shakespearean parts. Again, incredibly thorny sentences which go on forever. It's very hard to bring an audience with the very agile thought leaps that this person is taking, and you really achieved that with ease and with grace and with courage. Obviously it's a comedy, and like all comedies, they end in a resolution which involves everybody on stage and the kind of wrapping up of all that has gone before. We felt it was a little static at the end, that it was clear, and it brought things to a point, but that there was something lacking in the latter part, in the final scene of the play, which is not to do with individual performances whatsoever, but just to do with the balance, the momentum, and maybe the internal questioning of each individual character and what's happening between the characters and what's at stake. This is what it is. It felt like the play had finished by the time that last scene started, and it hasn't. There are still things at risk and at stake in that last scene. So dramatically, we felt it just dipped a little in that last moments. There's loads more to say probably, but I've probably said enough. And you're waiting, obviously, for the competitive element of this. Thank you for bearing me share our reflections with you. As interesting and as important will be you on your way home, sharing your opinions with each other. And also, just to return, we're about to come to the placings and the winning and everything else, but you've been doing this for many months, many of you. You've all been involved. We've picked out certain things that we've liked and that we've questioned. I would ask all of you to take some collective questions further on, which for me as a sort of visitor here, one of the things I would question for you is about the representation and where these plays are taking place. All of you independently chose to set these plays in a kind of European, classical Europe mixed with Elizabethan England, which is fine, completely works. But it is not the only way to do these plays at all. You know, when Shakespeare did these plays, as an actor and a writer, they used their contemporary clothing mixed with old clothing. They He sort of used all sorts of things. There is no single set way of doing these plays. They needn't be set in Europe. It's probable we know Shakespeare wrote plays about places he'd never even been to. He just heard some second-hand information and made it up. So I would encourage, as a possibility, when you work on Shakespeare in future, of making other choices about where this action could be taking place and how it can speak to you today here. Anyway, that's my kind of visitor's reflection overall. But most importantly, your commitment to the process, your ability, your respect for one another as a group, your consideration of the importance and the scale of this competition resonated through this auditorium, and you've provided all of us with a great night. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chris White. Ladies and gentlemen, one more time for the judges this evening. Before we begin, I'd like to invite the presenters to join us on stage. Firstly, Mrs. Mari Pires, the wife of the president of the Colombo YMCA. Madam, if you could join us. I'd also like to invite Mr. Dialog Hutch, the Director of Vocational Services, Rotary Club of Colombo North. Mr. Samuel Edward, the Director, Colombo YMCA. Mr. Dushant Basnaika, President, Rotary Club of Colombo North. Also, Mrs. Kaminka Jayamaha, Mr. Vijit Pires, President of the Colombo YMCA, and Mr. Shriyanta Senaratna, past President, Colombo Rotary Club. Can I have the presenters join us on stage? And ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for our presenters. I'd like to first invite Mrs. Mari Pires to do the presentation of the 4 cash awards given to the teachers in charge of the finalist girls' schools. Firstly, let me invite Mrs. P.A.N. Sammani, Vishaka Vidyalaya, Colombo. Mrs. Indwanti Luke Bandara, Lanka, Vidyalaya, Colombo. Mrs. Shamendri Fernando, St. Lawrence's Convent, Colombo. And Mrs. Hansini Vijay Soma, New State Girls College, Trivandrum. Thank you very much to our presenter, Mrs. Mari Pires. I'd like to now invite Mr. Samuel Edward to present the next award, which is the Challenge Cup for Best Stagecraft in memory of the late Mr. Gamini Ferreira, stage manager, which is presented, of course, by his daughter, Ms. Varuni, and family, together with the Colombo YMCA and the Rotary Club of Colombo North, awarded to Vishaka Vidyalaya, Colombo. to the presenter, Mr. Samuel Edward. This year we will not be awarding the Best Novice Girls School, so we move on to our next award. To present the next award, I'd like to invite Mr. Dushant Basnaikar, President, Rotary Club of Colombo North. This is the Rotary Club of Colombo North Challenge Shield for the Best Supporting Actress, presented by the Rotary Club of Colombo North and awarded to Rumashi Dasanayaka. Thank you very much to our presenter, Mr. Dushant Basnaikar. To present the next award, I'd like to invite Mrs. Kaminka Jayamaha. This year, in a surprising turn of events, Best Actor will be shared by two ladies, in fact. Mrs. Jayamaha will be doing the honors of presenting the Winifred Jayamaha Memorial Challenge Shield Cup for the Best Actress. This is presented by the members of the family of the late Mrs. Jayamaha, jointly awarded to Sashini Mudaliki of Vishakapatnam, Colombo, and Devini Galapati. Thank you very much, Mrs. Jayamaha. And now it's time for us to announce the results of the 4 schools. I'd like to invite Mr. Vijit Piris, President, Colombo YMCA, to do the honors of presenting our 3rd runner-up girls' school. The Rotary Club of Colombo North Challenge Shield, presented by Mr. and Mrs. Bede Anandappa to the 3rd runner-up girls' school this year, awarded to School G6, St. Lawrence's Convent. Thank you very much to the presenter, Mr. Piris. I'd like to now invite Mr. Shriyanta Senratna, past president, Rotary Club of Colombo North, to do the honors of awarding our 2nd runner-up girls' school this year. The Rotary Club Colombo North Challenge Shield, presented by Mr. and Mrs. Asoka Piris, to the 2nd runner-up girls' school for 2016, is School G11, Newstead Girls College. Thank you very much, Mrs. Senratna. And now I'd like to invite Mr. Dushant Basnaikar, President, Colombo Rotary Club, to present the next award. Okay, it's time for us to give out the results. Now remember, please don't shout. The Rotary Club of Colombo North Challenge Shield, presented by Mr. and Mrs. Dialog Hutch to the first runner-up girls' school for 2016, goes to School G8. And now I'd like to invite Mr. Vijay Piris, President Colombo YMCA, to give out the Inter-School Shakespeare Drama Competition Rotarian P.P. Harold Piris Memorial Challenge Trophy, presented by the Rotary Club of Colombo North to the winning girls' school of 2016, G7 Vishaka Vidyalaya.